This presentation will introduce Open Educational Resources, or OER, and we'll discuss how those are helpful for both faculty and students. We'll also look at a few research findings. I'm Suzanne Joachim. I'm the OER coordinator for Butte Community College in Northern California. And let's begin with a definition. OER are freely available learning materials that can be downloaded, edited, and shared to better serve students. Another way to look at this is that OER provides 5 permissions, called the 5 R's. Retain means you can download and keep copies for as long as you like, as can the students. Reuse means you can use the content in a variety of different ways. Revise means you can change the resource, add to it, remove from it, adapt it to best suit the content in your course. Remix means you can take multiple resources and put them together into a single learning resource for your class. And redistribute means you can share the content with others, in this case students. OER is a fairly new concept in education, and that's really the purpose of this presentation, is to discuss some of the basics. In future presentations, we'll look at the specifics of licensing and how to find these resources, but for right now we're going to focus on the introductory content because a lot of faculty are not aware of what OER is. In 2016, we gave faculty at Butte College a survey that mirrored a nationwide survey of the same year conducted by the Babson Group, called Opening the Textbook. And you can see here in the nationwide survey, 58% of faculty said that they were not aware of what OER is, and another 16% said that they were somewhat aware. At Butte College, we did a little bit better, but still most of our faculty are either not aware or only marginally aware of OER. And for that reason, we'll start with a bit of an introduction. In that same survey, we also asked faculty about how they select course materials. And 95% of faculty said that cost is an important consideration when they're choosing course materials. But only 38% said that they were satisfied with the cost of their textbook. Now in comparison, if you look at other aspects of the textbook, we asked about writing, graphics, and so on, the satisfaction numbers range from 65 to 80%. So overall, we're satisfied with most aspects of our textbook, but not so much with the cost. Now, cost is an important factor for students for a number of reasons, but one particular concern with textbooks is that those costs have been increasing even beyond other aspects of the economy. So these data from the U.S. Census Bureau show the overall consumer price index on the bottom line. The next line is the home prices, and you'll see the housing bubble right there, about 2005-ish. The next line up is medical services, and skyrocketing past even medical services are the cost of educational books. And so cost is a very important factor when looking at open resources. However, it is not the only factor, and at the end of the presentation, I'll talk about some other advantages that open has. The same year that we gave faculty a survey, we also gave students a survey asking them about various things about their textbooks. One of those questions asked, how much do you spend per semester on your textbooks? And you can see here most students tend to spend between $200 and $400. Now that's a pretty big range, and when we give this survey again, I'm going to separate those out a little bit more granularly, but this is the data we have. These are the data we have right now. Now, if you look at first generation versus other students, you'll notice that first generation students tend to spend a little bit more on textbooks. And what this is meant to show is that the cost affect different students differently based on their ability to navigate the system. This mirrors research nationwide, so an example of that is shown in the table on the right, where they were looking at the average cost of materials per unit. And again, first generation students end up spending more than other students. We also did a less formal survey where we had a poster in the library and students could put post-its up for how much they spend per semester. And you can see the same thing here. It clusters about $400 or so per semester. In the same student survey, we also asked them more specific examples of, has the cost of textbooks ever caused you to do any of the following? And notice that 31%, so almost a third of students, take fewer classes. So if we're looking at completion rates, success rates, students' ability to finish their degrees and certificates, the cost of textbooks is in fact hindering that. 27% say they don't register for a particular course because of the cost of that textbook. So students are making choices on what to register for based on the textbook cost. 16% said they drop or withdraw from a course because of the book. 40% say they attempt the course but do not purchase the textbook. And 17%, so almost half of those, say they earn a poor grade, which is hardly surprising. If the textbook is important, if you don't have it, odds are you're not going to do as well. As far as what students do to help them overcome the costs, 76% say they purchase the book elsewhere, so they're looking for cheaper places to find the book. 22% use reserves in the library, 32% share the book with others. A few of the write-ins that we got is a few students mentioned that they illegally download copies of the textbook, which apparently is not that hard to do online, but is most unfortunate. Others mentioned that they go into debt, so they need the book, they have no other way to get it, so they have to borrow money. A few other questions we asked students. 59% said that they purchase books in a semester that they don't use, which is interesting. And the next two questions we're looking at, are digital textbooks a good enough option? So the way that OER works is the digital book is available for free, and then you can also download and create a print copy that you can sell for the cost of printing, so fairly low cost. And the question was, do we need to offer both of those? And based on this information, I think we should. So 47% of students say they do or would use digital books, and 51% say they would prefer to read on paper. And so that's a pretty big percentage that do want that low-cost paper option. And fortunately, with Open, you do have that option. As far as keeping the books, 83% say they prefer to keep books in their major, and 41% want to keep GE books even if they don't relate to their major. So students do want to keep these resources. And again, that's a really helpful aspect of Open because you can download and keep that content. And even better, a lot of these downloads link to currently updated textbook, continually updated textbooks, and so students will always have the newest edition. Now, the next question is, are these books effective? Right? Because free is great, but what's really important is, are these textbooks helping students do well in our classes and learn the content? And there have been a number of research experiments that have looked at this. One that I want to discuss is out of British Columbia, where they took a very large section of classes with multiple sections and divided the sections into 3 groups. Some got the traditional paper book that they have been using, some got the open book but in digital format only, and some got the open book with the print option. And you can see that overall the students did as well in all 3 of the groups. So the digital textbook helps students learn just as well as the expensive textbook. Sorry, the open textbook helps them learn just as well as the expensive textbook. The only place that there's a difference is in the first exam. So notice that in the first exam, the students that had the traditional book did worse. And one can hypothesize that it's likely due to the fact that they may not have gotten financial aid, so haven't purchased the book, or they haven't quite settled on which classes they want and haven't bought the book for that reason. So odds are the reason for that is the students haven't gotten the book yet, and so aren't doing as well. So in conclusion, what this shows is that the open books, students do as well or better. They also ask students how much they like the book. So is it clear, is it engaging, is it helpful, and all these questions. And notice that the open print book does the best, followed by the open digital, and lagging behind is the traditional book. And these differences are all significant. If you look at the overall, how they would rate the book, again, the open print does the best, followed by the open digital, followed by traditional. Now what's interesting about this slide is they also asked students how much is a fair price to pay for the textbook. And you can see that it clustered about $50. And there have been other studies that looked at this as well, and the number always seems to strike right around $50. That's what students think is fair, right? So it's not that they don't want to pay anything for the book, but they have a sense of what is a reasonable amount to pay, and that seems to be right around $50. At Butte, we also asked our students who were using open textbooks, we also gave them a survey. Our setup was that we had a number of classes that moved to open for the first time in fall of 16. And for those classes, we gave a survey to both the students and the faculty. In the student survey, we asked them questions like, how often do you read the book in this class that uses the open book versus in other classes that don't use open books? And you can see that students say that they use the open textbook more than other textbooks. So 40% report that in other classes they read the book once a week or never, 47%, and in the OER class, 47% say they read 2 or 3 times per week. So if we're looking at advantages of OER, one is that students are accessing those resources more often. Now, to be fair, if we go back to our earlier data that showed that 40% of students report that they don't buy books for their classes, that may explain why they're not reading them. But nonetheless, students are accessing the open books more often. We also asked students how much they liked the book. So same sorts of questions. Did it meet your expectations? Was it easy to read? Did you like the graphics? And so on. And for all of those questions, 81 to 94% of students said that they agree with those statements. So it was readable, it had good graphics, and so on. So the student experience was fairly positive. We also asked how they accessed the book. So 76% said they used the PDF, 25% said they used a print copy. And so again, if we're looking at is it important to provide print copies, this does seem to show that a significant number of students do want the print copy. And back to the student experience, 77% said it was easy to use, 83% said they would recommend the book to others, and 88% said that their open book was better than others used in the past. And it's hard to know if this is because the books themselves are better or if the students just feel better about it because they didn't have to spend as much. But nonetheless, again, this is a positive student experience. At the bottom are a few student comments, and it's really wonderful in these surveys because the students' comments overall are always just so grateful. So a lot of our comments are thank you for caring about our financial concerns, thank you for thinking about this, just a lot of gratitude. We also surveyed the faculty using OER for the first time. Now we didn't have a lot of sections moving moving to open, and so these numbers are fairly small and they're not significant statistically, but they are interesting, and so I thought I'd share them. Out of the 12 faculty that responded, all of them said that they will likely or certainly use OER again. 7 out of 11, so one didn't respond here, said that the open textbook took about the same amount of time to prepare. Now this is important because one of the main concerns that faculty have is moving to this new textbook going to require work? And anyone who has moved to a new textbook of any sort knows that yes, that does require work. And with open in particular, some of these resources have a vast amount of ancillaries, so PowerPoints and lecture notes and test banks and all of this sort of thing, and some don't. And so the amount of time that it takes really varies based on which resource you end up using. 9 out of 12 said that the OER was easy to integrate into their course. It's the textbook like any other. 8 out of 12 said that the change in textbooks encouraged them to reflect on their teaching practices. And this is particularly interesting because this may have to do with the customizability, right? So when you have the option to customize the book, that can really help folks think about how to build the book in with their class. At least that's the effect it's had on my teaching. 7 out of 12 said the OER book was as good, and 3 out of 12 said it was better than their old book. So a positive faculty experience as well. Back to the faculty survey from the beginning of the semester, where we asked all faculty, regardless of if they're using open or not, questions about their textbooks. Most folks were interested in using OER or would consider it. The main challenges that we found is the most commonly mentioned challenge is that there's not enough resource for my subject area, followed by it's too hard to find what I need. And these are considerations. Looking for open resources can be challenging, and there's a lot of different places to look. There's not one place that has all the options. And for that reason, we'll spend a good amount of time in a future presentation looking at how do you search for resources and how do you find what you're looking for. The other common concern that folks had is that it's not used by other faculty. So is this some fringe idea? And it is still a new idea, and as it's becoming more and more mainstream, being used across all different aspects of education, this is going to be less of a concern. But for right now, it's understandable because this is a fairly new concept to education. And I want to end with the concept of what does OER bring beyond just being free, right? So free is great, but what else does OER bring that maybe the other textbooks don't? And one is you can customize it. So I mentioned this back with the 5 permissions, right? These books are fully customizable, and so if you find a textbook, and we've all had this experience, right, where there's a textbook we love, but there's this one chapter that's just really not that great. Well, what's great about OER is you can change that chapter. You can write what you like, or you can find a different chapter and put it in there. And so the ability to customize this is really helpful. Students can keep it forever. So back to students do want to keep their books. This provides them that option. And again, in a lot of cases, what they're keeping is always the newest edition, which is particularly helpful for majors courses, right? Students have access to the book right away. So very first day, everybody has access, regardless of if your financial aid has come in or not, regardless if you're going to still deciding what classes you want or not, everyone has access, and there's no excuse not to have access. Also, the opportunities for collaboration. So in our campus, this has really prompted a few departments to come together, create a working group, and build a textbook for common courses. And that tends to lead to some really neat discussions about, what do we want in our class? How do we want to organize it? What level of detail? And so these collaborations are really great for both reflecting on our own teaching, but also using teamwork to build a textbook together so I don't have to do all the work myself. And beyond collaborating within our campus, there's also worldwide collaborations in OER. It truly is a worldwide movement. Back when I was talking about some of the textbooks have a lot of ancillaries, those ancillaries were built by faculty members. And so if we all put in content, then we have a really robust set of information that we can use in our classes. And finally, because of all of this freedom, using open textbooks is a learning opportunity for both faculty and for students.